that was what really defined my entire childhood and my entire life was sounds and music. My first memories, and I always tell the story because it's true, like my first memories were toy instruments. I was always fascinated with sounds. And I had like I inherited some of my sister's toy instruments that she really didn't she wasn't really interested in that. So they were there hanging around and I start playing, and then my mom was like, oh wow, that's something she's probably interested in that. I don't come from a family of musicians, of professional musicians, but they are very musical. Like my dad used to play the trumpet. I do have one a professional musician in my family that was my grandfather, my mother's dad, and but I never met him. I only heard the stories of him. But I think because of that, she thought that was something on the DNA or the genes that she decided to invest. And I think first because she saw the interest, and second because she wanted me to stop just playing noises and learning how to play music. But yeah, but my first memories were there. I started with a small xylophone, like a toy xylophone, and then that toy xylophone became a keyboard, little keyboard, and then they realized that was serious, and then I got a piano and I started having piano lessons. And then since then, yeah, I was fascinated by.
And when did you realize that music would be the focus of your life, of your
I
career?
I think I never. I think it was just there. I think it was just there. I think the moment that that I realized I couldn't live without was when we were having a conversation with some friends, and this was I was like 14, 15 years old. And I was talking to my cousin, and a friend of hers came and said, oh, what are you guys talking about? Oh, no, let me guess. It's music, because Alex is always talking about music. And then that was when the light bulb came, I was like, oh, wow, that's true. Like I'm always talking about music. I realized that I wake up thinking about music and I go to bed thinking about music. So that's pretty much defined who I was since the early age. I was the one who would play the piano. I was the one who had the recitals. I was the one who was always listening to everything and dancing, and so that was always around me. And um, yeah, so I think that was the moment when I was around 14, was when I realized that I couldn't live without it.
And when and how did conducting come into the mix?
Oh, that's a good question, because I was playing the piano, and I heard the other day that I'm kind of like hyper, which I'm not, but apparently I had people perceive me as hyper. And I was a little bit bored with my lessons, so I started improvising in the piano, and the improvisations became compositions. And my friends realized that I was writing music for myself on the piano and playing, and they were like, "Oh, can you write something for us to play together?" So I started writing for flute and piano, clarinet and piano, and then or duets, and then that start becoming the group start becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point that they needed someone to conduct, and the only person who knew the music was me. So therefore, I stood up in front of my friends and this was I was 16. It was in the conservatory in Brazil, and yeah, and I performed my own composition. And then I realized, then I went to university in Brazil, because there we have we don't go to college, we go to university first. So I went to university in Brazil. I had a bachelor in composition and conducting, and I was all the way set to be a composer, but the degree was divided between composition and conducting. And in a certain point, you had to decide if you're going to be a composer or a conductor. And my teachers convinced me that I should do both. I should do double degree. So I did double degree. And by the end of the when I was graduating, my teachers approached me and said, you should actually go for conducting, including the composition teachers, and which I was surprised because I felt that they were investing a lot on me as a composer, and they really believed in my voice as a composer. But they all agreed that writing will always be there for me. But if I wanted to become a conductor, I had to start like seriously at that time. And I was like, what? Well, I always like growing up in Brazil, you don't have many orchestras. Um, and we always hear like it's hard for a man, imagine for a girl, like you have no chance to compete, and like those are the things not my teachers told me, but the environment, when you grew up with that. And then I told them, like, listen, we don't have orchestras here. It's hard for guys to get, uh, um, to get a music directorship or even be a guest in those orchestras. I have never seen any woman doing that. And they said, no, we can help you. So I got a very great support from my teachers at the university at first. And then when I decided to invest in leave the composition in the back seat, I realized that was really what I love to do, is to give voices to composers. And um, and yeah, and then when I started investing on that, that was when all the doors start opening. It was really interesting because yeah, the 6 months after I start serious conducting lessons, I got this assistantship in one of the big orchestras in São Paulo. And then after that, I went to master classes in Europe and US. And then was when I realized that I needed to leave the country because we don't have conducting and we don't have opportunities there. And I remember, I remember coming to US, um, coming to study with Harold Farman. And I remember that one of the impetus that I had was because he was one of the teachers of Marin also, which became my mentor later.
When I
But
first moved to the San Francisco Bay Area, Harold Farberman was the conductor of the Oakland Symphony,
really, oh my
which is right
God,
across the bay from us.
yes, I didn't know he did Oakland.
Yeah, that
Oh
was,
my
back
God.
in the 70s.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, I
So
didn't know
he's
that.
a name that is well remembered here also.
Yes, yes. No, he was a
I
fantastic
know
musician.
he had a big focus on teaching as well, and
Oh yeah, no,
a lot of people
he
studied
taught.
with him.
And that's the interesting thing because he taught Marin. And I remember when I was hearing like, yeah, there is no woman doing that. I went on a search. I was like, okay, let's see who's doing what. And then the first name that came up was Marin at the same time that she released the Brahms cycle. And then I was obsessed with those recordings. And then I read about her. That was how can I say, when YouTube came to the scene. And then I started looking at videos, and then I was like, oh my God, I was so impressed with her. Like she became my role model. And I found out that Farberman taught her, and I was like, okay, that's what where I'm gonna that's where I'm gonna go.